Hi, this is Greg Johnson with Blue Book Services. I'm here with Pamela Riemenschneider, our retail editor, and this is Week in Review. And we've had a lot going on this week, Pamela. We're both
Yeah,
back in the
tons of
office.
news. Tons of news this week.
Yeah, some good retail news. I am back from my serious work trip in Nogales, Arizona.
Is it sponsored on the back there? Did you get
No,
to
this
see
is my
that? Oh, that's just your hat. Oh.
golf was played.
Oh, golf was played. A lot of golf was played, and golf is so good in Nogales. Got a little bit of elevation, just enough to really hit the ball. So yeah.
And it was 80 degrees each day while the polar vortex of pre-Thanksgiving was hitting the Midwest, even Texas.
I know. I'm aware. I have not taken this hoodie off for a week. If you might have noticed that I was wearing this last week, because I'm so cold that I'm just not ever going to take it off again. So
I want to start off with a column that I wrote, and I think it ties in with a lot of the trends that are going on right now, and that is we're getting to a point in retail where everyone is acknowledging that online is definitely for real, and it's definitely increasing. And a lot of retailers were testing different ways to try to meet that demand. And one of the things we're starting to see in stores, especially retailers that are having success with online sales, is that they're having either company employee shoppers or gig economy shoppers run into the store, and they're starting to compete with traditional shoppers. And this is causing a problem. And some of the mainstream news organizations have covered the issue. And I talked to a retail analyst who's been in the online space for a long time, Bill Bishop, and he said really in the last 2 to 3 months, retail has come to grips with this being a reality. And one of the solutions that I think he thinks, and I agree with him, that is going to be, at least in the short term, the best way to deal with it is either kind of mini warehouse areas of the store or complete dark stores where there are areas where consumers don't go, and it's just pickers for online orders. And you kind of covered this too, haven't you? And he mentioned 3 chains in particular, Walmart, Hy-Vee, and Ahold, that he's been in those dark stores and seen that oh yes, this will work.
Yeah, this is something. First of all, number one, I love the term dark store. I just
it sounds evil, but at least it certainly sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool, but this is something that I've been kicking around. I've been talking about for years, where it just does not make sense to pay people to merchandise food and then pay someone else to pick it. You're basically hiring a personal shopper, and in the long term, the margin on that is just not there. We don't have the wiggle room in retail, because people are not going to pay what it actually costs to have a person stand in for them at the store. And then, like you said, we've got the really funny Wall Street Journal column talking about shoppers acting like they're in Mario Kart, throwing bananas back behind them, trying to zoom through there. The moms group that I'm in for here in Austin has people complaining about the gig economy shoppers peeling through the store and hitting their kids with grocery carts. It's a problem. And then Walmart steps in. This is one of the bigger stories that we had this week, was a column I wrote about Walmart sitting back and going, yeah, we don't use gig economy people to pick our orders. We use fresh experts. Our expertise, our people know how to pick produce. And it's kind of true. Like every story that I've written, every time I've tried online grocery, Walmart has always met or exceeded my expectations, and I've always had a problem with every other retailer I've tried. So is there something to it to not have the gig economy folks, and then just to have the people move out of the traditional store into these dark stores or into the mini warehouses? Totally makes sense to get everything out of everyone's way.
Yeah, well, there's another angle to it, in that there is going to be some automation, and the automation is going to come in center store. And if it ever comes to perishables in the produce department, it'll be a while from now. So it'll put pressure on chains to have people represent them to their customers who know what the heck they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't trust your retailer to pick decent produce for you, you're not going to do it. And the
Yeah.
fact is, 9 out of 10 shoppers buy produce when they do shopping trips, and online is starting to show similar percentages.
And the elephant in this room right now that we're talking about, we keep talking about online grocery and the in-store experience. We had a lot of stories come out this week talking about Amazon's Los Angeles physical store location. What's it going to be called? Will it be called Amazon Fresh? A lot of people think it might. And what to expect out of this Amazon brick and mortar grocery experience. It's not intended to compete with Whole Foods. I've even seen some pieces about how it could be a multi-storied store where upstairs will be all the center store stuff that's actually just going to be an automated shopping experience that spits it out as you're leaving, and the only thing that you will see that's customer facing is fresh food. Everyone wants to know what's going to happen, and that's probably going to be the biggest retail opening of 2020 is this first initial Los Angeles area Amazon grocery, because we all want to know what's going to happen. So I have some ideas of what it could be, and I have a feeling it's going to be heavy on the fresh experience. It has to be to justify the space. And then the rest of it's going to be Amazon lockers. I don't know.
It also has to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be a museum store, a cutaway, but that doesn't mean it's a trend that's going to spread.
Yeah, it doesn't, except for they've got a couple dozen leases already signed to expand the concept into a bunch of different areas. So I think that they have, I think, 16 Amazon Go stores, and they're learning a lot from there. This new grocery is not going to be that Go concept. It's not going to be the grab and go and no cashier thing. I have a feeling it's going to be minimal center store, pickup hub for Amazon orders, and then that pantry style of Amazon ordering. You can pick that up there, and then just the fresh experience with a lot of take home meals. The Amazon Go stores have meal kits in them that are Amazon branded meal kits. They could have those in there as well. That was another story that I had this week was Albertsons is killing or scraping the plated. Oh, I tried. They're scraping the plated subscription model. They bought Plated a couple of years ago for a couple $100 million, right at like the peak of subscription meal kit popularity. And so now they've decided they're going to relaunch it as an in-house brand. Albertsons got a ton of private labels. So Plated's going to be their meal solutions and in-house food brand. And it's kind of fits along with the narrative that we're seeing meal kits go through. We saw them go subscription, people back out of the subscriptions, retailers are starting to push them in. I saw HelloFresh actually as an exhibitor at PMA, trying to get retailers to sign up with HelloFresh. You can buy HelloFresh at HEB around the corner from my house, in addition to HEB's own branded meal kits. So I don't think meal kits are dead, but I think it was just another nail in their coffin as far as the subscription model goes.
Yeah, and they just failed to deliver. They failed to deliver the promise to consumers, I think.
They failed to deliver. I saw what you did there.
They weren't as cheap. They weren't as easy. They had more plastic and trash.
Tons of trash. And that was something that you covered from the FPAA conference is the plastic issue. What was this panel talking about when it comes to the latest in fresh produce and plastic? Consumers, media is all over plastic. What's the industry talking about?
Well, the biggest expert who talked about it was Ron Lemaire, who's president of the CPMA. And Canada, since it's smaller and tends to be a little more progressive than the United States, it is much further along in consumer desire to rid the country of plastics. And Ron said it's really to the point where it's very unrealistic in that they want to get rid of plastic, but they don't seem to want to listen to what the consequences will be. And Ron said, plastic for a lot of times is the right answer because it improves, food waste problems, it improves food safety. So the industry really needs to grapple with, if we are getting rid of plastic, what do you replace it with? Is that better? And Canada's probably going to have to deal with it before the United States. The United States will do it more on a region by region basis. And another point that came out of it is Rick Stein with FMI, who did a trends presentation, said FMI research shows that 53% of consumers say they will pay more for smart packaging, which would include lower plastic, but only 8% actually do that. I think that's kind of what we would expect.
Yeah, that's the golden stat that I've always been really looking for, is people say they intend to do it, but they don't actually end up doing it. When I read your story from FPAA, it reminded me that CPMA had this fantastic Produce Talks podcast about their plastics working group, and some fascinating things from that study. And with the talk from the podcast, you should really check it out. It's awesome. It's only like a half an hour long. Is that consumers have this idea of that plastic, and since produce is so temporary in your life, you see the plastic, you see the single-use plastic, and you throw it away so frequently, you have this negative perception of the plastic that's in the produce department and thinking, oh yeah, there's so much plastic in produce, but you totally forget about how much plastic is in the rest of your life because you're not throwing it away as often. Like your laundry soap bottle and all this other stuff. There's tons of plastic elsewhere. There's actually a greater environmental impact, but produce kind of like is up in your mind all the time because you interact with it so often and it's so temporary. And then people also aren't thinking about the true environmental impact of the other solutions. The study was talking about strawberries, for example, purchased in clamshells, and would consumers, knowing that a clamshell does A, B, C, D, E, F, and G as far as shelf life and logistics and transportation and protection and food safety, and the paper carton does plastics minimized. And they would still go with the paper carton instead of A, B, C, D, and E, just because they think it's a better option, even ignoring the rest of the benefits that the plastic brings. So the one last thing, the final thought from that podcast and from the research was that produce isn't doing a good enough job of explaining the function of plastic and the measures that we've taken over the past 5 to 10 years in reducing the amount of plastic that we're using and being smarter about the plastic that we are using.
Well, one of the speakers, I don't remember which one, said, anytime you see a consumer buy strawberries, what do? In the store, they turn it over. They look at the bottom to make sure there's not going to be moldy ones down there, so they lose some of their strawberries. You put it in a cardboard container, people aren't going to be able to do that.
No.
Are they just going to trust a retailer?
I don't think they have. They don't have that much trust in retailers. They don't have that much trust because they'll get it home one time. They'll buy it in that non-see-through container. That one time they get it home, they find the moldy one. They're going to blame it on the container, and they're going to either take it back or throw it away and never buy it again.
Yeah, that's right. And if we think back to when we were kids, what did we buy strawberries in? There were those weird punnets with the little plastic overwrap and a rubber band, and you couldn't see what was in there. And there were a lot of times they were moldy, and the retailers don't know when they're getting moldy. I mean,
and you know what?
Is an improvement.
Your mom only bought them like twice a year because that little tiny container of raspberries or strawberries or whatever was $6, and you never saw them again. I buy strawberries every time I go to the store. I buy raspberries every time I go to the store because they're in these containers. They're affordable, they're fresh, and they have an amazing eating experience. And that is all brought to you by plastic.
Yeah.
Hard truth.
Well, you don't convince us.
I dislike plastic as much as the most vehement millennial, and I do everything I can in my life to minimize it in other places, but I tend to give produce a pass on a lot of this stuff because I know the benefits that it brings to our consumption. So try everywhere else, man. I cloth diapered my kids. I didn't even buy diapers at the store. That's one of the bigger causes of trash than anything else, and people don't want to think about that one because they don't want to go through the work. I'm willing to do the work to minimize plastic, but not in produce.
Yeah, you'll get crappy strawberries, and they'll cost
Yep.
more.
Yep. All right. Well, that's probably more than enough for this week's Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter in your inbox, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. See you later.
Back to happier times.
I need to find my hat so I go pick up the boys and freeze my buns off. Okay. Has a more reasonable food trend list. Did you read Whole Foods' food trend list? It was like,
I'm trying to think. All right.
I got halfway through a column on it, and then I'm just like, I can't. This is too ridiculous. It's like tiger nut milk. Like,
that was Whole Foods ones?
Yes. It was like grab and go snacks, duh. Plant-based foods, but like plant-based with a twist. How about tiger nut flour?
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah. Fresh Direct is more like artisan cheese and charcuterie grab and go snacks. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not buying the whole biodynamic wine trend, though. I mean, sure, the percents could be way up, but it's from like one case in a whole metro area to a case and a half, 50% growth. Seriously.
I actually see it. They had a whole class at Central Market about biodynamic wines a couple of years ago, trying to explain what it was. And I wasn't at that class, but they were talking about it. And I'm just like, I still don't get it. I remember back in the day when we first heard about it, people talking about planting with the seasons and the moon and whatever. And I was like, okay, sure. Did it grow okay? All right, awesome. Then I guess it worked. I'm
not seeing that with wine. No way.
But everything else, though, I'm looking at, I'm like, functional beverages. We saw Bolt House drop 25 new products at PMA, and like half of them were probiotic gut shots. So that's something that I'm seeing everywhere. The little charcuterie kits, I see those at the airport now. I don't have to bring my own pocket cheese and a pocket salami.
But you do.
I do. Come on, we know I do.
Because you never know when you're going to need cheese.
You never know. I mean, pocket cheese is the best snack ever.